Happy Wednesday morning, everybody. Okay, so this is going to look a little different because we're going to start module today. So what you'll notice is here is my module notebook, and you see me. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to screen share our PowerPoint, and we're going to give this a go. So here we go. Okay, hopefully everybody can see that. We're going to start Module 4, Unit 2. Here we go, Lesson 1, listening to and rereading a speech by Susan B. Anthony to infer about her as a leader of change. And what we're going to work on here is women's suffrage, and we're working on a story called The Hope Chest, which all of you will get, and we're going to read it together. So let's get to our first slide. Okay, so what you're going to get is some vocabulary. This is going to be in your materials section of your Google Classroom. So we have an opinion, what someone thinks, feels, or believes. A leader, a person or thing that leads. To infer, we know what an inference is, to draw conclusions or make judgments based on evidence. Alleged, it means declared or stated to be as described. Denied, a state that something declared or believed to be true is not true. Committed, to pledge to a position on an issue or question. Exercised, to put into action, use, operation, or effect. Indictment, a formal accusation initiating a criminal case presented by a grand jury and usually required for felonies or other serious crimes. Lawful, it means permitted by law, not against the law. A right, it's a moral, ethical, or legal principle considered as an underlying cause of truth, justice, morality, ethics, things inside your core that make you good, your truth, your justice, your ethics. Suffrage, the right to vote, especially in a political election. And this was a really big deal because women weren't able to do this for a long time. So let's review our learning targets. I can respond in writing to a partner's ideas, and I can infer why Susan B. Anthony wrote and delivered on women's right to the suffrage. So this is going to be a little different because normally we turn into partners and we have conversations with our classmates at the table. We're not able to do that today. So we're going to do the best we can. So let's think about this. I can respond in writing to a partner's ideas. So I've circled the word respond in our target, in our learning target. And I want you to think about what the definition means. What is the definition of respond? So think about that for a minute. What is the definition of respond? If you said to answer in writing or in oral form in a speech, then you are correct. So normally I'd ask for a couple of volunteers to explain the second learning target. I can infer why Susan B. Anthony wrote and delivered on women's right to suffrage. So think about it for a second. We know what an inference is. We know it's what we think and what we know coming up with a logical conclusion. Think about it. What can you infer about this very famous woman writing a speech on women's rights? I'm going to reread Susan B. Anthony's speech, and I want you to think about how she was a leader. So we're going to write this guiding question on the board, or in our case, we're going to write this guiding question in our notebook. What makes someone a leader of change? So I'm going to come over here to my module notebook. What makes someone And I'm just skipping lines so it's easier for you guys to see. And when I stop the screen share, you'll be able to see my notebook a little more clearly. But what I wrote was just what makes someone a leader of change. This is my module notebook. If you don't have your module notebook, you can use any piece of loose leaf paper. I would just say that if we're going to not use our notebook, make sure that you have a folder or somewhere that you're keeping all of your papers all together so that you don't lose anything. Because we're gonna, you know the module, we're gonna have to refer back to a lot of documents. So what makes someone a leader of change? Okay, so in this case, we're going to be working independently. Each of you will need your piece of paper or your module notebook, and you're going to have a written conversation, which means everything you're thinking, everything you want to say, you're going to write down inside your module notebook. Each of you has a copy of the directions in the material section and will be able to see it. Here they are. So you're going to write down the posted question on the paper, which is what we just did. What makes someone a leader of change? Then we're going to write down our response to the question. What we would normally do in class is we'd trade these papers with each other to share our answers, but we'll share those instead at our Zoom meeting tonight. So you have 5 minutes to have a written conversation with yourself. You can pause the video and you're going to write down ideas of what you think makes someone a leader of change. Write down a few ideas that you have, pause this video, and then come back once you're finished. Okay, so here's some of the responses you could have come up with when it comes to being a leader of change. A leader of change is someone who can help change unfair rules. A leader of change is also someone who's brave, someone who helps others, someone who stands up for what he or she believes in. So these are all really great examples, and I'm going to write these down inside my module notebook. So a leader of change is someone who helps change unfair rules. Someone who helps change unfair rules. It's also someone who is brave. And it's someone who stands up for what he or she believes in. Okay, good job. So let's add any additional thinking that we have to the anchor chart for the first question, which is what I did here inside my module notebook. Okay, so today we're going to look at evidence that Susan B. Anthony was a leader of change in her speech on women's right to the suffrage. So we're going to hold on to this written conversation that we had because we're going to talk about it more at the end of the lesson. We're going to listen to this speech. I am going to post the link to this speech under the materials section so that you can hear it played for you on your own time. I'm going to try to play it here. I don't know if you're going to be able to hear it, and I won't know until after the video is set up. So I'm going to make sure that you guys have the link to click on the audio of the speech. What you also have is the recording form in the material section on your Google Classroom. And we'll need to gather all of those things in order to go forward. So here you have this page on your Google Classroom. It's a Google Doc. You can click right into it and type. So you're going to type in your name and you're going to answer the question after you listen. What's the difference between listening to a speech and reading it on paper? The paper speech is in your material section as well. So you're going to read the speech, listen to the speech, and tell me what's the difference between listening to it and reading it on paper. Okay, so now we're going to re-examine the first part of the speech. You've listened to quite a bit, and this is going to help you gain background knowledge and better understand the text. Moving right along. Boop. Okay, so I want you to open up your copy of the Women's Right to Suffrage by Susan B. Anthony. It's attached in your Google lesson. And I want you to remember that it's okay if you're still struggling as we read this. This is lesson 1, guys. So it's going to take some time. Remember the beginning of Native Americans. We didn't totally understand the Native Americans when we started. Remember colonial America. We didn't quite get colonial America when we started. So if you're struggling right now, if you're a little confused, that's totally okay. Ask questions. Ask me at Zoom. Send me private comments in the classroom. Any of those things are fine. And take it slow. Don't worry. So remember, as closed readers, we have various strategies of tackling complex texts. What are some of the things we have as closed readers? We chunk. We can read for the gist. We read sentence by sentence. We circle words we don't understand. We underline things we think are important. And we read little bits and summarize them so that you're summarizing each little bit as you go. So when you get to the end, you've chunked it and you understand the entire text. Okay, so you're going to have this close reading recording form on your classroom as well. We have 3 vocabulary words and their definitions, and then you have 2 questions here that you're going to have to answer for your classwork. Okay, I want you to reread the speech, and I want you to remember what it's mostly about. It should only take you about 5 to 10 minutes to reread the speech, which is located in your Google Classroom material. So think about what it's mostly about. If you came up with something like my little buddy here, think it's about how Susan B. Anthony thinks women should have the right to vote. It's about how she got arrested for voting, but thinks women should be able to vote just like men. The first time you read closely the beginning of the speech, you read it for the gist and to identify and figure out unfamiliar words. Today, we're going to listen to the speech and we're going to compare it. Look at the directions and questions on the front of the closed reading form. What's the difference between listening and reading it on paper? So take a minute, listen to the speech, read it on paper, and answer the question what the difference is between listening and reading the speech. We'll discuss this tonight together at our Zoom meeting. Here's the audio clip that I'm going to post for you. It's at learnoutloud.com, and you can click the speech to hear it played. Stop the speech once you've reached the end of the excerpt students were given. Listen for the line ending in, provided by this Democratic Republican government, the ballot. After that, you don't have to listen. It's a longer speech, so there is more to it, but you can stop it after that section. Scrolling. Okay, so I want you to take about 5 minutes to record your answer on the recording form. Next, I'd like you to reread the first paragraph of the speech and answer some questions to help you infer what made Susan B. Anthony a good leader. So you're going to come over here to your piece of paper. And it says directions, read the text and answer the questions on the right-hand column. Use details from the text to support your answer. And if you need the glossary above, you can use it. So here we get this little excerpt on women's suffrage from Susan B. Anthony. And then it says to use details from the text to answer these questions. The question is, why did Susan B. Anthony vote when it was against the law? And what can you infer from the text about why she gave this speech? Take a minute, type your answers in the Google Classroom on the Google Docs, and send this to me for your classwork. Here you have your glossary, alleged, deny, and committed in case you need the definitions. Okay, so my lovely little girl here says, Ms. Anthony thought the laws were unfair. My evidence for my inference include alleged crime, committed no crime, and exercised my citizens' rights. So what can you infer from the text about Susan B. Anthony's speech? And my lovely little girl here says that she could infer that Mrs. Anthony wanted to speak up for something that she believed in. The line from my text that supports my inference is that it shall be my work this evening to prove that I exercised my citizens' rights. So how did giving this speech make Susan B. Anthony a leader of change? Think about it for a minute. How about because she broke an unfair law for what she believed in? Because she shared her beliefs with an audience by giving this speech. And because Susan B. Anthony wanted to prove to her audience that women should have the right to vote just like anybody else. Okay, now we're going to come to our homework for tonight. I want you to write a short response. Give me a few sentences. I would say at least 3 to 4 in your answer and then you need to provide 2 additional pieces of support. You're answering the question, how do you think Susan B. Anthony made a difference for women? I want at least 2 reasons of support from your evidence. If you have any questions, you can send me a private comment and we can talk tonight on Zoom. Send me the classwork, send me your homework. I will send you the audio recording and we'll meet tonight on Zoom at 4 o'clock and we'll talk all about this. Remember, if you're struggling, it's okay. Go slow, try your best, and we'll figure it out together tonight, okay? Bye guys, see you tonight at 4 o'clock.